Frank Langella insisted on being called Mr. President. You couldn't call him Frank, you couldn't call him Mr. Langella, and he did not talk to anybody. I did not get to know Frank personally until after we wrapped. He's the
Oh,
nicest
how
guy you've ever met,
yeah.
but he would walk on set. We'd all be on set waiting. He'd walk on set and he walked like Nixon. He looked like Nixon. He sounded like Nixon. And when he walked on set, he took the air out of the room. Everybody just stopped talking. And when you were behind camera, the hair on your neck would just stand up because you're like, I'm here with the president.
I just rewatched Frost Nixon, just like literally finished watching like 10 minutes ago. And I loved it even more now because when it came out, I think the political angle probably wasn't that something that I understood the way I probably understand it now.
Oh,
And
actually,
the
it's
and
so relevant now. You got a point there.
y- yeah, but itself, the film in a technical and a performance standpoint, it's just so beautifully done. You know, you don't even feel like it's basically two protagonists, and it doesn't feel like anything that's dragging in any way. So truly a wonderful film, and still holds to this day. Still holds.
Thank you. That's fantastic.
Uh,
Thank
Tell me, how did you get on board on this film? Was it because of the previous work with Ron Howard, or
Yes, yes. I had done, actually, I met Ron was going to do the Alamo. He was prepping the Alamo,
okay?
and I interviewed for it and started to prep it. And then Ron, for some reasons, couldn't do the film, and I backed out with him. And we sort of parted ways. And then about 8 months later, he's like, "Hey, I got this film called The Missing. Are you interested in working on it?" And I was like, "Yeah, great." And I loved working on The Missing. It was great. It's just Ron's energy is just amazing to work with, as well as his experience. So from The Missing, we went on to do Cinderella Man,
Right.
which is another one of my favorite films. And then Cinderella Man, we did Da Vinci Code. And then in between Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons, we did Frost Nixon. And then went on to do Angels and Demons after.
I've seen all of those films except The Missing. I think The Missing, I remember the poster. It's Kate Blanchett, right?
Yeah, Kate and Tommy Lee Jones. What was hard about The Missing was that it was a dark story, and we kept coming up with ideas to push it into a dark, you know, area. And the studio's like, "Look, we need PG-13. We need a PG-13." So we kind of had to dial things back, and in the end, it wound up getting an R rating. And so it kind of we didn't quite push it to where we could have pushed it.
Yeah.
But it was the politics at the time and the rating system and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and well, Frost Nixon was kind of like a docu style in a way. You guys, the way you guys did the interviews of the actual actors playing to be the characters and reflecting
Mhm.
back on something. How did that sort of transpired? Was
Well,
that
it's interesting
something?
you said that because when we were prepping, I had gotten the original interview tapes, and I started to look at it. I looked at it for about 5 minutes and I turned it off. I said, "Oh my God, this is horrible. I can't, we can't do this." And Ron's like, "What are we going to do? How are we going to make this interesting?" And I just looked at him and was like, "Ron, we made this movie already." He's like, "What do you mean? It's Cinderella Man. It's two opponents that are training to fight, to box together." And I think that that's the approach that we need to take. We need to sort of bring that energy to the interviews as well. And I made a big push with Ron and the production designer. The interior house was a set that was built. And I was
Mm,
like, we need to bring the outside world in. That was the other thing, it was like, we need light sometimes. We need to be reminded of what's outside and how the world changes. And it's not just this closed in, stale interview to sort of bring it to a crescendo. So before the interviews and after the interviews, we would open the blinds. And the production
mm.
designer made a really nice backyard out this patio. We had a little bit of the front with vegetation and all that. And we tied that into a location of a house that we shot in the valley in Calabasas for Marnock Bay. And I think that sort of worked really well. Um, and I think, doing those little techniques and this little kind of things just add other layers, kind of brings a little depth and subconsciously brings the audience to like realize how we're not watching a film, but that this is something that's real that's taking place at that time.
Yeah, and one of the things that I started using in the films that I do is especially, you know, the idea of showing cameras in your film, especially if it's something to do of a nature of a story that demands that.
Hmm.
When you show like the way you guys showed monitors and cameras and everything, it actually subconsciously it registers something in the audience brain, whether it's this is of much importance, even if they know the story is important, right? It
Hmm.
just does something, and I think it's such a cool tool to have. And I do it all the time. Obviously, if the story demands it. If it's a event going on, media circling, you want to show that it's a event that media is hovering around. It makes it look even more grand and big and than it already
It adds
is.
another level of reality to it.
Yeah,
Absolutely. There's that one shot talking about those old TV cameras with the monitor, where you see
yeah.
the monitor in focus and Nixon in focus in the background. I did that by using a split diopter.
I was
And
going to ask you that.
a diopter is basically like a magnifier that you
Yeah,
put in front of the lens to help you kind of get close focus. But a split diopter, so a diopter is round. Split diopter is cut perfectly optically down the center. So one half of it's clear and the other half is magnified. So I was able to pick the size diopter to get the the president in focus in the background and the monitor in focus in the foreground. And you kind of hide the edge of the diopter along the camera. I mean, if you look really carefully, you could see it. And it's interesting because I've seen that used in other films in the past. Um, there was one film in particular where, oh, it was the original Hoffa
Mm.
with Jack Nicholson and Danny DeVito.
Right.
Uh, and there was a scene in there where, he's on stage, he's behind the curtain, and I think Danny DeVito is and Hoffa's on the stage, and he had them both in focus. And I just remember seeing that going, I got to remember that because one day I'm gonna need to use that. And that was the time I used it. And I always had back then when we were filming, I always had a big filter kit, a lot of different types of filters, and I always had not only diopters, but I had split diopters with me because you just never know, like in a moment where something might come up that you're like, oh, this is a
Yeah.
great idea to use this tool right here.
100%. One
Yeah.
one one thing that I really found interesting about the film, I mean, most of the film is the interview, right? Not all, but
Hmm.
most of it. And how do you make that engaging and interesting from a visual standpoint? Of course, you have to have a great script, great dialogue. You have to have great performances, but to keep the audience hooked visually, I thought that was really well done because you don't feel for 1 second that, this is getting too long. Was there a specific approach that you wanted to take in terms of the amount of different, like overheads, close-ups, dollies behind them? And like, was that something that you were always sort of had that in mind that we need to get as much coverage as possible?
Yes, and like Cinderella Man, Ron and I sort of broke down each of the interviews like we did in Cinderella Man, where we broke down each fight and we approached
Hmm.
each fight a little differently. And so that's what we did there with each of the interviews. We didn't continuously shoot them the same way to sort of help build that tension and bring it to a crescendo where the president finally admits guilt. And we did that with each and every one. I think maybe the first one, if I remember correctly, it's been, God, how long has it been? 17 years. Wow,
Yeah.
17. I gotta say, it's one of my favorite films I've shot.
Why is that?
Just because about what I'm about to say, but like that. I think the first interview we sort of shot a little bit more mundane and a little more on the boring side to sort of start to bring that audience up. And I think it's one of my favorite films because we put so much thought into every little detail of
Mm.
every shot. Even in the beginning when the the gurney's being wheeled down the hospital floor, you
Right.
know, we were looking at doing a shot of the gurney, and it's like, Ron, let's just do a shot of this wheel. And we rigged the camera down low, and just that wheel sort of moving like that just added this little subconscious tension. It's like something's off here. It's like, what's going on? It's just like a little imbalanced. And it was like down to that little detail, down to that little wheel on the gurney.
Mm.
Every aspect of this film we approached that way. Ron wanted David Frost. I'm talking in character's name. Michael
Yeah,
Sheen,
yeah,
the
yeah.
actor,
Yep.
David Frost, and a lot of it during the film, like what also made it special. Frank Langella insisted on being called Mr. President. You couldn't call him Frank. You couldn't call him Mr. Langella, and he did not talk to anybody. I did not get to know Frank personally until after we wrapped. The
Oh,
nicest
how
guy you've ever met,
mm.
but he would walk on set. We'd all be on set waiting. He'd walk on set and he walked like Nixon. He looked like Nixon. He sounded like Nixon. And when he walked on set, he took the air out of the room. Everybody just stopped talking. And when you were behind camera, the hair on your neck would just stand up because you're like, I'm here with the president. I'm not here with an actor playing the president. It felt that real. So getting back to the David Frost, we wanted to do a shot of him driving up to the house and sort of bringing in the neighborhood and environment. And Ron's like, I want to see all the reporters outside the house, as he comes up, and then the president's motorcade drives in. And I was like, well, why don't let's try to do a oneer. And Ron does not like oneers. And I understand why. Like, I push it often, and I think Scorsese gets away with it in an amazing way, and a few other people since then have done really well with it. But when you're in a one, you're sort of locked in time-wise in that scene. And if you don't have cutaways, it might affect the whole length of your film or how you time different scenes editorially. So Ron likes those options. So I really pushed hard. And then I was like, look, I got this idea for this shot. I could give you a cutaway here and here, but let's try it and see how it works. He's like, all right, I'll try it. And what we did was we had David Frost driving the car. I had Sam Rockwell in the back seat behind David, Oliver Platt and Matthew McFadyen on the curb around the corner,
Yep.
another camera operator and another focus puller without a camera waiting next to the actors. I stripped down an Arri LT. I just had a little monitor on it. We had the cable going out onto the roof with the battery pack on the roof. The door was tied open. I had a camera assistant in the back seat behind me, and I was in the front seat with the camera body. I'm filming David. I'm looking, there's a guy on a bicycle. I'm looking out the window. We turn the corner. We see all the news media and everything. As we pull up to the curb, somebody takes the camera battery off. I lean back, I slide the camera out. The other operator takes the camera. The focus puller in the back hands a remote focus out to the focus puller on the curb. The camera operator takes it and gets up with Michael Sheen as Michael Sheen comes out, and you see Sam Rockwell there, and then Matthew McFadyen and Oliver Platt come around the car, and then as they're about to cross, the president's motorcade goes past. They look at it. We go to the curb, and we come in, and just as the president's motorcade stops, door opens, the president gets out. We're over David Frost's shoulder, right into hello, blah, 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 blah. We did wind up cutting to a cutaway of a high, like, Secret Service camera angle of all this. But, sort of planning that it was really a lot of fun. And Ron was like, let's try it. Let's see how it works. Let me see how I can make it work editorially, as long as I have some options. And, he did cut away one time, but it was so much fun. And like, just doing that kind of detail and the teamwork in that. It's not just me and my camera team and the grip department, but it's also the actors and working and communicating with the actors and while an actor's free driving the car's not being towed. There's a stunt person on a bicycle. There's a lot of variables taking place, and the
Yeah.
camera in the car, and this whole thing that needs to happen at the curb and all that. I think maybe we did 4 or 5 takes. It was almost every take was perfect, and it was so much fun. And so, you say, why is it one of my favorite films? It's like, not only is it a great film to watch and what it means to people and how it looks, but making that film was really sort of special and fun. It's one of those days you go to work where every day you go to work, like, I am so lucky what I do. I'm so happy today. I'm happy, what I do for a living. And it didn't
That
matter
is,
about, making money or anything. It was just like, I'm having fun at work. And that is a great day at work when it happens. We're always in a lot of hard situations, different types of films you do. Like, Any Given Sunday was my first movie. And it's like, how we were going to make the football look different. And, how we're going to do that. And then Oliver Stone and the whole sort of Miami party environment that was, behind the camera, that chaos that ensued, or doing Everest, where I went to the Himalayas and we went up the mountains and we shot in the Dolomites, and I got not frostbite, I got nerve damage in my toes and my fingertips. To this day, I'm still dealing with it. It's like every film you do, there's always some sort of challenge to it, and fun or difficulty to it. But Frost Nixon and Cinderella Man were probably the every day. I never thought, what am I doing? Where Frost Nixon, I mean, not Frost Nixon, where Everest a couple times was like, I want to feel my toes again. Why am I here? It's a big difference.
it's so interesting the way you just talked about all this. And one key thing that you said was, it's not obviously everybody has to get paid, but it was not about that money. It was just about that being able to do this because it was fun. And it's almost like, when you're a child, you do things for fun, not worrying about what the
Yeah,
consequences be or you're going to get paid for it or not. It's just
yeah,
something
yeah.
you enjoy going to the
You enjoy
park.
doing. Yeah.
And that's what's so amazing about creating stories, and what we do is just enjoying going to work. Yeah, it's gonna have a lot of challenges. There's gonna be tempers, there's gonna be this and that, but in hindsight, when you look at it, everything when it comes together and you watch it on the screen, like, oh my God, remember how we created this? Like what
Yeah,
we went through to
yeah,
do
yeah.
that? Like it was so much fun, or it was so much challenging. But that's
Mhm.
awesome. I really appreciate your enthusiasm for sharing something that was 17, 18 years ago. It's really cool to hear that.
It's nice. There was also like a shot in particular we shot on the balcony of the Beverly Hills Hotel.
Are
And
you
the
talking
camera
about
goes,
the ending? The last
I
scene?
can't remember exactly where it
Okay.
was in the scene, but it was their suite. And the camera starts outside and goes inside.
Okay. Yes, yes, yes.
And it starts outside a location in Beverly Hills and it's inside on set,
Really?
on stage. Yeah. And we choreographed that and did a little sort of camera technique, a little just sort of wipe. No visual effects. I mean, there was a little visual effects in the background to clean up some old buildings and stuff, newer buildings that weren't there at the
Right.
time at the location. But there were things. We thought about all that detail. Ron's big thing doing Frost Nixon was the drunken phone call, and he insisted. He's like, I want this live. I want this live because it's going to add so much to it. So we had two sets. The interior, we actually shot. I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place because I'm so
No, no,
excited.
it's lovely. It's
Kind
lovely.
of keep coming up. We shot a lot, 2 days. We shot some scenes at Nixon's real house.
Ah,
Yes, which was really, I forgot to bring this up. Was really interesting. I'll get back to about the drunken phone call, but what was really interesting
don't
about
worry
that
about it.
was the owner that owned Nixon's house was an old time friend of Nixon, and he bought the house from Nixon. Beautiful, beautiful, right there, and overlooking the ocean. It's just stunning. And it was very reticent for any filmmakers because everybody portrayed Nixon in a not nice light, you know?
Yeah.
And he was open to hearing what we wanted to do. And Ron spoke to him and sent him the script. And he's like, I'll let you shoot here. So we got to shoot at Nixon's house, which is pretty
That's
incredible,
amazing.
you know?
That is,
So
yeah.
then we built the interior on stage, and we had two stages next to each other, where one stage had Nixon's interior, the other stage had the interior of the Beverly Hills Hotel Suite. Beverly
Where
Hilton,
David Frost was
not
with
Beverly Hills Hotel, Beverly Hilton Hotel.
Hilton.
Make that, there's a difference, yeah. So the Beverly Hilton. Um, and we connected a live telephone line. The sound of Peter Devlin, incredible sound mixer, figured out how to mix the sound on both stages at the same time. And the phone actually rang, and I had two cameras. And I happened to be operating one camera on the Frank Langella set, the president's set.
Mhm.
And I had operators on the other side. And this is film, so it's not like monitors and digital camera and stuff. So I had to, I had to jump back and forth, make sure all my exposures were right. I was happy with the look everywhere. Talk to my camera operators about those angles that I wanted to make sure they got and make sure they looked right. And then I worked with Frank Langella and Ron on one set while that was happening. And the phone call was live. Every single time that phone rang, the hair would just stand up on my neck. I was like, and we were scheduled to film that all day long. And we were doing all of the shots and everything, and Frank was just unbelievable. Then we finished at midday. We finished by lunch, the whole scene. So we wound up pulling work up from following days, which allowed us to finish making that film 2 days early. We were scheduled for 40 days. We finished it in 38 days. I shot more film on Frost Nixon in 38 days than I did in 86 days on Da Vinci Code. We shot a
Really?
million
Wow.
200,000 feet of film on Frost Nixon.
That is incredible.
Yeah, yes.
And
Yeah.
and it's so cool that Ron decided to do that scene, with a call actually taking place because
Mhm.
I mean, I didn't think about that, but it felt so damn real. And
Mhm.
when you see phone conversations in movies, just in general, you can tell, that it's just there's nobody on the other side.
Yeah,
Even if you believe it, you can tell there's
it
nobody on
drives
the
me
other
it
side.
drives me crazy every time we do a movie. And I'm like, just especially this day and age when you have when they're all on cell phones. I know the actor's not working today, but I bet you if you ask the other actor, hey, at between 2 and 3 o'clock, would you mind just getting on the cell phone and just reading the lines with the other actor because we're going to film him on the other side? You know,
Yeah,
it's like, oh no, we can't ask him to do that because then technically it's a work day for them, and then we can't, they're only scheduled for so many days or whatever the politics on. It's like, you know
yeah.
what? At that point, it's like that. Let's drop that and let's bring the fun back into it. And I think anytime it's real, you feel it, just like you said. You said you could tell when nobody's on the other end.
And it's not just even that stuff, the phone call, the scene that you're talking about, you getting out of the car, the camera operator, the focus puller, and all that. Nowadays, you would have all those cranes with the car sitting on a truck or something, or like, those LED screens. It's great and everything. Technology is awesome. But again, that fun that everything has become so strict. You have to do this way, you have to do that way. Filmmaking is
Mhm.
supposed to be about fun, creating
Yeah.
stories, emotional stories or funny stories.
Mhm.
Um, but it's great to hear that because I'm really excited talking to you about all this stuff because it's making me light up as well. It's awesome.
That's great. I think, you bring it up today. I think you could really tell the difference when you see LED screens
Yeah.
for for process work on screen. And there's a big push for it. And there's all this technology, and there are constantly new companies coming out, bringing us cinematographers in, showing us their technology. And it's still not right. And I think it's about being disciplined, knowing what you want to do, planning ahead. It is difficult to shoot on a real location, but it adds a lot to it. But if you're disciplined and you have your game plan in place, you can be very efficient with it. We did 4 takes that driving sequence, then we went on to continue shooting other scenes. I mean, it's just, that's the way Ron is. Ron's somebody, he's 10 years older than me. He's got the energy of somebody 20 years younger. And like every day Ron comes to work, it's like his first day ever coming to work. He comes to work, he's so prepared. He's got a script, he's got his notes, he's got a shot list. He's got his little anxiety going, you know. And we drive into work together, and you could just tell, like, they usually pick me up first, and he'll be waiting on the corner. No matter how early you get there. If you say we're going to pick you up at 7 and you drive up at 10 to 7, he's outside waiting. If I come 27, he'll be outside waiting. And he's like,
That
hey,
is so
guys, how
awesome.
you doing? Morning. Did you get any sleep today? Did you get, well, yeah, I got up a little early. I was working on the shot list, and I changed this thing. And Ron, you just got in the car. Let's get a cup of coffee on the way to work, and we'll talk about it. And it's so invigorating to work with a leader, a director, a very creative person that sort of brings that energy, that confidence, and their direction from the very first second of the day. It's just, again, you feel very lucky to
Yeah.
to
And sorry, go
work.
on.
You feel lucky to work with them and happy. It's nice.
One of the things that you talked about technology and locations in my book, and that my book is just my book, right? If I'm watching something or if I want to do something, if I want to make a film or if I'm telling a story, three things are, which is something that studios I feel are forgetting nowadays because they're trying to save money. The biggest thing with any film is story, right? How good the story is, the script, how good the characters are, number two, and the location. I think those three things are so pivotal. And now we're so slowly shifting away from all that. And you can see that that's one of the reasons, among many of the reasons, because they're streaming, tickets are expensive, people are not getting into movies. I mean, movies like that used to come in the early 2000s or 90s or 80s. I don't remember. Like, I was talking about this to John Seal, cinematographer of English
Hmm.
Patient, and I
John's
said the
work,
same thing.
Ron.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's
Very
awesome.
good.
A lovely guy too. But I was telling him the same thing. It's like I don't. If somebody asked me what movies are you looking forward to this summer or winter, I probably will name two or three, because there's that excitement thing is gone. Like those good stories are not there anymore. At least for me. I don't
Hmm.
know. Maybe I'm just too old school. But those times were great. Frost, Nixon, Cinderella Man. Even Da Vinci Code and The Insider with Russell Crowe by Michael Mann. And I mean, I can go on and on
Amazing.
and on.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing stuff. Um,
I
Go
think
on.
you're right, because what happens today is there's too much relying on the technology and not not committing. You're going to build an office set, and there's a city outside the window. And I did this on the movie Changing Lanes. Today, they're like, we'll put up a green screen out there. Like, why? Why don't we just get a translite, and then you have no real or you can have little visual effects by putting some blinking lights and a helicopter or something going by. Well, we don't know what we want to put out there. It's like, well, let's talk about and let's decide what to put out there. On Changing Lanes, we had 360 feet of what's called a Dorotrans, which you have to front light it for day and you backlight it for night. And then the only visual effects they added on a Dorotrans is basically a big transparency photograph for people that don't know. So it looks very real. And then we just added like a helicopter going by, and at night a couple of blinking city lights like that. But there's no big visual effects. It wasn't tens of thousands, $100,000 in the visual effects.
Yeah.
It's all done in camera, and we did tests. I was very concerned with the front lighting of the Durotrans and all the spill and how we were going to deal with the spill light at the time, and also giving it a little bit of softness. And my gaffer, Jay Fortune, and I came up with this, plan to front light it. And in between the set, the lights, and the Durotrans, we put a net, a white mesh net, just to make the Durotrans a little soft. And we
Nice.
did tests, and we tested that. And then at night we dropped the net so that the city felt a little crisper. It was a big
That's
undertaking from the company that made the Translite. And so, it was great to be able to test it because there was a couple of panels that were a little bit more magenta, and they came in and they did these washes over it and clear, made it really nice and smooth. And you look at that film and you think you're in a 30-story skyscraper in New York City. It's all done in camera. And today I think there's a lot of studio executives that haven't had this sort of on the ground experience, have not come up through some of the older times like that, and don't quite understand what it's like or how to achieve that and get that kind of look, or they just are too afraid to make a commitment or won't make a commitment to what it should be outside. And there's times, look, it doesn't work every time, but majority of the time it works, and it works really
yeah.
well. Yeah.
That's so true. And by the way, Changing Lanes is one of my favorite movies.
Uh,
We will talk about that some other time, but I just wanted to
okay.
point that out. It's a great film. Probably one of Ben Affleck's best, as an actor.
Yeah.
Um, Going back to Frost Nixon, I really liked the ending scene, and I was glad, because when the president Nixon, played by Frank, he admits to his wrongdoing, right? And he says that in my book it's not wrong, but in everybody else's books it's
Yes.
wrong. I'm aware of that. And you see the reaction on David Frost's face, like he felt pain for Nixon, like he felt for him. And then there was a really great scene in the end, the closure scene where they meet on the balcony of the hotel, or I think his house, I
No, his
forget.
house.
His house, right? And then he brings him the shoes, right?
Hmm.
Um, I think the coolest thing about that scene for me was he never opens the box. You never see the shoes. You just
Hmm.
you guys did to show them earlier in the film, like
Yeah.
when he was trying to get him distracted. It's just a little thing. I don't know if I look into things too much. I just thought it was really cool that you guys didn't show the shoes because it was not about the shoes. It was about them two just seeing each other off in a
Yeah.
positive way.
You're not looking into things. You're exactly correct. And that's the conversation that Ron had. That's what he wanted. And that's exactly how he wanted you to feel. And it's wonderful. When I just, I'm like, I could cry right now of happiness. Hearing you say something like that and knowing while we were making the film and the director wanted that portrayed, and you say that that's how you felt. It's like winning the championship match. It's just, it's just, and I wish I could feel like this on every film. It's just unbelievable.
I'm glad to hear that. No,
It's
it's
great.
it's
Thank you. I love
it,
that, because even that, like, what are those shoes? They're Italian. They're pretty effeminate. And
yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
it's-
I mean, nowadays everybody wears them, right? Like it's
yeah,
such a
yeah.
common.
But, it was also like, Nixon taking a dig at him
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
different
yeah,
way. And it's very much what's happening in the political environment today.
yeah.
And I mean, it's kind of sad. Not much has changed if you think about it, but it's only gotten worse. However, all those little details, it's written in the script. Everything was thought out. The writer who wrote the script, Peter Morgan.
Hmm.
Every word is thought out. every emotion. And he worked with Ron. There was a script, and then they kind of worked on it together. And as a filmmaker, you think about, I wasn't in the room with Ron and the writer, but when you read the script and you see the film, you realize like what work they put into it. Like they thought about those words and how they were going to come across visually and what they meant and how it would take the audience on a journey and where in that story that journey should be. Um, whether it was a peak or a valley or, a desolate road or, a busy highway at that moment. It was really thought through. And, putting the film together like Frost Nixon is not sort of done in a haphazardly way. Um, a lot of work, a lot of forethought and effort really goes into it, and communication and teamwork. That's what's really nice about working with Ron. He creates this environment, this collaborative environment. It's a team. And you could constantly throw ideas out at Ron, and some of them stick and some of them don't. And he'll just say,
Yeah.
"No, I don't like that idea, and this is why, and I'd rather do this." And you try to push back, and he'll push back again, which is really, it's again another happy day at work. It's not just the work on set and filming, but it's also that communication and that collaborative with your general, so to speak. With the creative leader. It's his film. We're here to help him tell his journey. He's the captain of the ship, and I'm the first mate. And it was a couple of times I think maybe this is, I want to take it on this sort of scenic view, the boat, and I'll make that suggestion to the captain. And sometimes it works, and sometimes he's got his own scenic point. And it's
Yeah.
just wonderful. It's wonderful collaboration, and it's again very happy to and very lucky to be in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, Ron Howard's work, at least, it goes back as early as with Tom Hanks and Splash.
Yeah,
But for me, the film that really started my journey, knowing who Ron Howard was Willow, and then followed by
yeah,
so many other
yes,
films, amazing
yeah,
films that
yeah,
he's done. And he's still at it, right? And now his daughter is in films, and it's incredible to see that and you could tell again, you and I have saying this over and over again. You can tell when you watch a film if people had fun making it. It shows
yeah.
clearly from performance to lighting to editing, everything you can tell. And you can also tell if nobody had, there's a movie called Red Planet. I'm sure you've
Red
heard the
Planet.
story.
Oh,
Yeah.
now that I hear the story, Anthony Hoffman asked me to film the
Also, you
movie.
were part of that.
I was not part of it. I was
Oh,
asked to
okay.
film it, but I couldn't. I had a
Yeah.
conflict.
Because how they had like Tom Sizemore and Val Kilmer, they were didn't like each other at all, and they shot them separately and different times and all that. And you could see there was something there that I learned about afterwards. So
Yeah,
it's again going back to that team effort and collaborative. It shows. It just clearly shows.
yeah.
Um, just kind of wrapping things up. In terms of you as a human being learning about Nixon or Frost Nixon interview, how much were you aware of it? And if not, how much research or preparation you did? And
Well,
was there any surprises?
I was a kid when it happened. I
Right.
remember the day Nixon resigned. My father took me to work with him, and he brought the television from home to his shop so his customers could see, the president resigning. I was 9 years old, I think 10 years old at the time. No idea of politics. So did not even know about the interviews between David Frost and Richard Nixon. So when I got the script, I read the script. I was like, wow, this is fascinating. And like I said earlier, I started to watch the interviews and I was like, stop.
Yeah.
I don't want this to, put my point of view in. And then, you went online, you started doing some research, you started reading about it as an adult. I was 30, no, I was uh, 44 years old at the time we shot Frost Nixon.
Mhm.
So I kind of had to re-educate myself, well, not re-educate, but just educate myself on sort of that political time because I was too young to be aware of it.
Right.
I think what's interesting and what's happening in the world is that some of history gets being rewritten or forgotten about, and we keep making the same mistakes. And I think that it's so important that all of this be taught in school, people get educated so that we can grow as a civilization, as opposed to kind of stepping back in the same doo-doo that we keep stepping over.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you walk out of your house, you make a left, you start walking down the street in New York, and poop, you step in dog poop. And the next day you come out and you do the same thing. And you like didn't learn or like see that there was dog poop there because you forgot. It was you were told that it wasn't there. And
Yeah. It is. I mean,
that's why we need to make films like this.
I
We need
I
to
couldn't
you
agree with you
know,
more.
it's like George Clooney in Eyes of March.
Right.
It's a really amazing movie.
One of the things that I really appreciated in this film, and part of it is probably because that's the kind of film when I make films, I try to tell, there's always a protagonist and there's an antagonist or
Hmm.
antagonists with an S at the end. It's important to show the antagonist in a humanistic way, no matter how crazy he or she or they are,
Hmm.
right? And always strive for that. You have to have an objective standpoint, no matter where your feelings lay. I really appreciated that in this, with especially in the end, the phone call and then the closure and everything. Yeah, you can argue that he made a lot of mistakes intentionally, unintentionally, whatever that was. But at the end of the day, him petting the dog, in the last scene, just humanizes him. And I think that when you humanize even antagonists, you dislike them and like them at the same time, if that makes any sense. And I thought that was really cool. I really, really appreciated that. And it's not because I have any particular political views, it's just because you always want to understand the dark side of human beings, that they are still at the end of the day.
Yeah, you do. And there are people that love them. And you're
Mm.
like, how could they love them? Because you've only seen sort of what you understand as the dark side of somebody. But yeah, everybody's got a human side. And I think that's important that you do bring that out. And it was done really well in Frost Nixon. It really was.
Yeah.
It
Well,
was, and I've never said this before, but it just feels like a perfect film as close to perfect as you can get. And there's only a few films in life that feel like that. For me.
I
So,
no, it's up there for me too. And one of the reasons is not because it's a political film, but because it's a story of two individuals. And that's
yes.
what's so amazing about it. It has
Hmm.
nothing to do with politics, even though it
No.
does.
Yeah. It's two opponents getting ready to battle. It's
Right.
just like that. Just you know, you look at boxers. Is that vacuum? You hear that sound?
No, I don't hear anything.
Okay. My neighbor, he's constantly vacuuming. He's OCD and he vacuums every little detail of everything all the time. Uh, anyway, I can hear it. Where was I? What was I saying?
You were talking about two opponents,
Oh yeah, two opponents.
boxers.
Because if you look at and you see there are boxing opponents, sports athletes that are opponents, and they're friends off court,
Mm,
out of the ring. There's some humanity to them in that way. It's not just all, blood and guts and
yeah,
evil destroying. It's part of it's a job they do. Even though you're an athlete, it's your job, you know?
Yeah.
And they're happy doing it, and they're happy when they're, playing and beating their friends or losing to their friends and their friends afterwards. And it's kind of nice. And but I think we need to remember that too.
I,
There was
I,
a
I
moment
couldn't
there
agree more.
where, the gloves came off, and there was a moment of friendship between Frost and Nixon at that end there. It's nice.
And to kind of close it off, it's in real world nowadays, whether it's in the celebratory world or political world or even like, average individuals, that camaraderie, like if you're having a competition with somebody, it's it's not there as much as it used to be. I mean, the only time I see it is in sports, like in tennis and football, or for example, I watch a lot of cricket, which
Yeah.
you have teams that are going at each other, but off field they're practicing next to each other, they're chatting, they're giving gifts to each
Mhm.
other. And that's so important to have nowadays because you have a professional relationship and then you have a personal. They're two separate worlds.
Personal.
Like,
Yeah, exactly.
as George Costanza says, is the worlds should not collide, so you got to keep them separate. I don't know if you've
Separate. There
seen
you
that,
go.
Kyle.
But
Awesome.
I think that competitive nature with athletes, and that it's more of a competitiveness with yourself.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, you're gonna, you have your opponent, but really you want to be a better version of yourself.
Yeah.
It's like, your adversary is more yourself than your opponent you're playing on the field.
100%.
Yeah, it's
100%. Even when you're going for a
fantastic.
job interview or anything, like it's always you trying to pull out your doubts and trying to make them into confidence and trying to push yourself
Yeah,
than anything else. Right?
very true.
Amazing. Awesome. So much, man. I
All right,
appreciate
cool.
your time.
We
This
uh,
was
we got to talk
fabulous.
about Cinderella Man at some point.
I
And
We
making
would
that
love to do
film
it.
was just another, moment of happiness in an amazing way, where I
Amazing.
drew on other inspirational aspects. A lot of that film was inspired by a painter named George Tooker in its
Okay.
look and its time period.
I would love to do that again. And other of your films, if you're up for it, I really, really enjoyed talking to you and your
Oh, great.
passion
Thank
for
you.
storytelling. So I would love
I
to
got a
do it
film.
more often.
I got a film coming out this fall
Oh,
that Billy,
okay.
that William Goldenberg, first
Isn't he
time
a
director.
screenwriter?
No, he's an editor. Five-time Academy Award nominee, one-time winner, William Goldenberg.
Okay. What's the film called?
At the moment, it's called Unstoppable, and it's about Anthony Robles, who is a one-legged wrestler who won the college national championship in 2011. It's a story of, overcoming disability, overcoming adversity at home, um, and
That's amazing.
Anthony, Anthony's an incredible person. You meet him today, and he's just so inspiring to be around. Holds a few Guinness Book of World Records. He was born without a leg and without part of a hip. And, for his
Wow.
life, he was told he couldn't do things. And he, he just walks in the room and makes you feel like is anything in life you want to do, you can do. So, yeah, so Billy was his first time directing.
I'm just
I
looking
know,
at the cast. So there's Jennifer Lopez, Don
yeah,
Cheadle, right?
yeah, Don
Michael
Cheadle,
Pena. Uh,
Bobby
yeah, big
Cannavale,
cast. Yes.
Gerald Jerome.
That's amazing. I'm excited to see that. And though I love those kind of stories too.
Yeah,
So I'd love to chat about that too. You got another film on the wrist to talk about.
yeah, yeah. It'll be out this fall.
Is it on
Amazon
theaters or
releasing it.
platforms?
Well, I think it'll be out in the theaters. They're talking about for a couple of weeks, and on Amazon as well.
Awesome.
We
Eh,
we color timed it for a theatrical release as well as an HDR release.
That's awesome. Is the trailer out yet? I haven't seen
No, not
anything.
yet. No,
Yeah.
the
Okay.
trailer probably will hit sometime September.
Okay. So it's one of
Just
those.
waiting on a few visual
Yeah.
effects to be done, and the film's done. It's finished into editing. Billy's he's back on with his editing hat on, and he's doing Paul Greengrass's current film.
I love Paul Greengrass too. What
Yeah.
are you shooting? Anything coming up? Anything scheduled that you can talk about?
No, just some commercials at the moment. I'm sort of looking for the right story. The work environment's a little slow at the moment
Yeah,
because
yeah.
this potential strike. What they just want the contract to be completed and signed and delivered before they start pouring more money into productions. It seems like they have a tentative deal with the film technicians, IATSE. It's still negotiating with the Teamsters, which is
Okay.
really interesting. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm sure things will, I mean, pick up, and it's not. I mean, even in the world that I am in documentaries and everything, it's just, you know, slow. Even in
Well,
business, everywhere it's slow. The economy is kind of, but it will pick up. I'm sure. I'm sure it will pick up.
yeah,
But thank you
well,
so much.
people need to see things.
Yes, need to
All
make
right.
great stories. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you. Have a good day.
Okay. You
Bye.
too. Bye bye.